What is my higher self trying to tell me? Slow down. I was going 20 miles an hour. I don't know what it was. And I don't know what the message is, or even if there is a message. You know,
It may
you
not
have to
be
pay
a message.
attention to
It may have been warning you to be careful.
That's what I thought. And I'm like, well, that's not me. You know, I'm tired of being careful in my life.
Sometimes it's good to be aware.
Aware, hyper vigilant.
It's especially if you plan on surviving.
Hey, man.
Some of us
move on to the next life. I'm getting very tired of living in a world where most everyone is stupid and asleep, and there's a few of us, spouting out wild stories, and nobody seems to be able to come together on anything. I'm just like, I'm as frustrated as you are. You know, I mean, there's.
Yeah,
what,
I am
what am I supposed to do?
frustrated.
What are we supposed to do?
I've been public for 6 years, and I'm still getting the same blank stare and the same beginner questions, and it's frustrating. And I'm to the point where I'm doing my show as a podcast, and the conference I'm going to in October will be the last one where I make a personal appearance, and if I attend any more, it will be as a Skype call, not as in person. They're just too expensive.
Yeah.
Those of us on limited incomes, you can't put out $2,000 to go to something where you're not making any money.
Yeah, I've never been to a conference. It's like, why? I mean, it's just like, you can hear the lectures on YouTube and videos, and they're very interesting sometimes, but it's like everyone's talking in the disclosure movement. Nobody's getting along. All these narratives are different, and nobody seems to see the big picture. I don't know why some of us can, and the others are like, well, I believe in UFOs and the Nazis and everything, but the rest of it's crap. You know, and it's like, why? Can't you put the dots together? Don't you have an imagination? I mean, it's like everyone's, bland Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan has this huge following, and you know what his
Here.
right? They think their idea is that it only went to America. Like our Space Force. I mean, it's ridiculous because, no offense to Farrell or Dolan or anyone, but it's like there seems to me a lot of these people are scared shitless. They're scared shitless that the narrative that you and I are talking about gone off the rails, and it's not fact based, and it's not history book based, and there's no archive footnotes and all this shit. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Here's a big clue. And this is what I have an interview coming up with someone else, and I'm gonna tell them. As a historian, it's easy. The big clue to all this stuff we're talking about. The big fundamentals of history, they never, ever change. And here we go. The elite few rule over the many.
Mm-hmm.
Drugs and alcohol as a salve, false friend, poison salve. My battery's dying. Let me shift. Caste systems, racism, sexism, and slavery. That's never changed since Great Flood.
True.
And this money is slavery. Religions continue to mind control everyone. Sorry, it's just a fact. It's that's the problem with Farrell and some of these other people. It's like, come on, man, religion. He knows. He's smart enough to know, but he's scared shitless because he needs God and that salve of religion. I saw his interviews they were very good with this woman who's not passed away on the Bite Show. And they're all like, oh, God bless you, Joseph. And he's like, oh, God bless you, And it's like, oh, come on. And he's talking about Nazi atrocities. Where does God fit into any of that? So you have religions. And then the last one is wars and weapon development. And for the last 12,500 years, you can prove None of that has ever changed. Civil rights, we get little changes, women's lib, progressive things, but the main nasty, big, iron hard fundamentals of history never ever changed. Who has the omnipotent power over groups of royals and roundtables and governments to keep that going? I'd like to see someone debate me on that. You can prove that from
No,
history.
I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Everyone's like,
There
"Where's the
was
proof over
there
here?" I'm like, the proof is right in front of your eyes.
the the Anunnaki group that call themselves Shahami
Yeah.
have been in charge of us for our entire existence, some 200,000 years, and nothing has really changed. They have a caste system, they have royalty that runs the show. They are so sexist that their women are kept inside their homes and rarely allowed out. Inanna was a major difference to that, but her husband was killed, so she was a widow. Um, Everything that is in our cultural standard, the things that you talked about that don't change, are all in Shahami culture.
Yeah.
And they won't change as long as the Shahami are in charge of us, because that's what they see as natural.
Right. It's like World War II. I mean, German women were put into factories eventually, but at the beginning they were just nurses and, okay, SS guards in the camps. They were brutal, but mostly, they wanted you to be a housefrau and let the men do the fighting. Now, when it got desperate, they implemented more women in communications and other jobs. But it's like, this whole history of this pious religious, America was founded on religious freedom, which I believe in. I believe in religious freedom. I just don't believe in religion. Yeah, it's bullshit. But
That makes
people
sense to
should
me.
be free to do whatever they want as long as it doesn't hurt someone else. But religion hurt me. My school used it as a weapon growing up. God hates you, John Warner. You're a troublemaker. You think too much. Geez, don't even get me started. And everyone else is like,
Well,
"Oh, you being on
as
religion."
a too smart for my own good woman,
Yeah,
this was how to put it. I had family that told me women don't even have souls. And this was a Christian group.
well, I kind of believe that. But okay, I'm just kidding. But my dad does the same thing. He's like, "No cussing, God damn it!" It's ridiculous. You know,
Yeah, I see the Anunnaki as a 3D physical race, just with very long lives relative to us.
Yeah,
Do you see them that way as well?
I sure do. I see them as physical beings, not multidimensional beings, not etherical beings, not people that live in different universes and all this stuff. I've heard a lot. These were people that directly lived here, flesh and blood people that interacted with human beings on a personal level.
Mhm.
The evidence is written and etched into stone tablets in the cuneiform, Akkadian, and Babylonian, and they dwelt amongst the people of those eras, and they had battles and fights. Some were killed, some were dismembered, some were badly injured and wounded in battle. And so these were people. These were
Yeah.
flesh and blood people that lived here. They're not any kind of other, people try to make them into ghosts and they're real. They were real, actual physical beings, and they had phenomenal and still do have phenomenal lifespans because of their advanced technology and knowledge of genetics. They were
Uh-huh.
master geneticists. And so, yeah, they're real people. They're not some of these etherical plane beings and alternate dimension beings and stuff like that, fourth dimensional. No, they were just flesh and blood, third dimensional beings that happen to be a very warring race. For whatever reason, I can't, understand how they can rise to that level of technological advancement and still be that envious and jealous of one another, but they did.
Yeah, that's something that has always amazed me, was that they got to that height
Yeah.
and still had all the petty negative issues like we do.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's just that's shocking. when you think about it is, how did they get that far and not outgrow this stuff?
Right. I know. It's amazing. And what it really seems like when you analyze these tablets and you start seeing that on their home planet, they had achieved some certain level of peace and the wars were really ancient, like the wars had gone away, but they still had some weapons of mass destruction and things like that, which were stolen and brought to Earth with this breakaway civilization that they created. It seems to me almost like Earth became, or this actual solar system itself became a wild, wild west, where once they start, when they first got here, as you're reading into all these different tablets, you're realizing that they were trying to follow this rule of law that was established from their own planet. And then at some point, they started to realize gradually, like, oh, there's nobody watching over us. Oh, there's nobody telling us we can't do this. And so they were having conversations back and forth, like, well, who could stop us? But they took that wild, wild west approach. It's like a kid. You have a teenager, and then that teenager, is like 17, 18. They start going out on dates or start hanging out, and they start realizing, oh, well, nobody's going to tell me I can't do this. So they go a little further, and a little further. And I think that's what happened. They got out of control. And because there was nobody to, put them back in their place, they just went rush out all over the planet and just really, they went crazy. They literally went absolutely crazy. They really started to believe they were real gods.
Now, that's the impression I get from a lot of the tablets, is that they started off rational.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, the power went to their heads. And they started believing they were real gods and smiting people who didn't.
Yeah.
You're this little human. You're looking up at this guy that's significantly taller than you are, and going, and I'm supposed to do what you say. Why?
Right. Exactly. So that really, they got the God complex. The ego took over. And unfortunately, they began to even fight themselves. So if you read the book of Deuteronomy, you realize in the book of Deuteronomy, which is in the Bible, there's these wars that keep going back and forth. And these wars are not, God is supposedly calling on these wars to happen. But if you really go to the ancient texts and find out where the book of Deuteronomy stems from, you realize it's multiple gods with an S, not singular, fighting against each other and sending human beings out to battle these different cities and towns against each other to steal the spoils of war, more land, more resources from one another. So they began to battle each other using human beings as chattel, unfortunately.
Well, that the book I'm writing, I'm tying that in as the beginning of the super soldier phenomenon, was these Anunnaki coming and using us as their proxy soldiers.
Yes.
And that the real difference now is that now humans are doing it to each other instead of the Anunnaki doing it to us.
You're right. So right. I went to Alabama State University a few years back to do a lecture and a workshop. And while I was up there, I went to a facility that housed the SR-71 Blackbird.
Oh, that thing's pretty.
It was phenomenal. Great experience, And while I was there, I was looking around at some ancient war relics that they had in that facility. And one of them was a gigantic ballistic missile. And, ballistic missiles are designed to fly around the planet and destroy another city halfway around the world. And on that ballistic missile was written in graffiti from a soldier. It said, "I'd fly halfway around the world to smoke a camel." So obviously that's a double entendre. And what they're saying is, I'd like to launch this thing to go blow up a guy, riding a camel in the desert. And this is like on display, I mean, so human beings start seeing other human beings as worthless. Like there's no life, there's no human value to human life. And it's really unfortunate.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of that coming out on social media, is my kind has value and yours doesn't. And I'm like, pardon my cussing, but where the hell did they come up with such a screwy notion? We're all human.
Right. Yeah. I know. It's really, we got to change this, and the only way to do it. And people tend to get confused with having pride for your race, but also having support and love, unconditional love for the human race.
Hmm.
For example, sometimes people get misconstrued. I may be trying to work with market my message to Black people, because Black people, unfortunately, that's a fact. It's not even hidden anymore. It's well known that we're far behind a lot of races on this planet due to what happened to us. And so it takes a special type of message that I have to put out sometime to target them, to click in their brain, to get them to wake up, because the religion and the epigenetic memories from the ancestors are kind of really ingrained in the DNA. And it's hard to wake up and snap us out of the delusion that we're in. So I
Well,
target my
they're also not very trusting, which I understand 100%.
Absolutely. So it's been a lot of work that's gone into that. And sometimes people will come on and go, no, man, it's not about, it's all about us. I'm like, yes, it's all about us. I support the entire human race, but I also have to try to do a little extra work over here, because we got to get up to par. We got to bring ourselves up to par with everyone else consciously. We got to snap out of some of these things that have been hard coded and programmed into us
Hmm.
for hundreds of years, and so it's a process.
And the other side also needs to be snapped out of the same bullshit
Yeah,
flip
I
side
agree.
of it.
I agree. Yeah. And when we can do that, and we can begin to kind of come together and understand that we're not going to advance on this planet separate.
No,
Divide and
no.
conquer has to end. We got to realize it's a trick they've been playing on us for eons, eons. And
Well, they've separated us by race, they've separated us by religion, they've separated us by language, they've separated us by primary abilities.
yes, yes,
And they've decided the more they keep us fighting each other, the less we fight them.
absolutely,
Because if we were ever united, we could do whatever we wanted.
exactly. And they know that. They understand that power. That's why at the Tower of Babel incident, if you look at the Tower of Babel incident from the Sumerian tablets, it's totally different from or it's explained more in detail than the Sumerian tablets versus what's in the biblical detail, where obviously Yahweh comes back and see human beings building a tower in heaven. But in the tablets, it's really human beings working together, building a tower into heaven. They were replicating something that the Anunnaki themselves had already built. It was like a cargo. They were trying to duplicate this technology. And Yahweh is actually Enlil from the Sumerian tablets,
Yeah.
one of the most evil rulers of all time. And so he realizes, he says, wait a minute, whatever they set their hearts to do, they can achieve it. So he says, I got to blow this thing up. So he blows up the Tower of Babel, literally. And then he has the human beings separated and taken all around to different regions. And he has their languages changed so they can't communicate with each other. And so it was all this. This is where the big divide and conquer really, really manifested.
Yeah.
Where he was like, look, if these people keep doing this, they're going to realize they don't even need us. And
we
so,
don't.
Yeah, we don't. And so he had to start the divide and conquer tactic. Gone on ever since.
So yeah, that's probably the worst heritage that they left with us, was they divided us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how I see it personally. So
Yeah.
that's the worst thing that the Anunnaki did. The other thing was that they set us up to kill each other over which Anunnaki we worshipped.
That's right. That's huge. And that was the biggest one to do that was Marduk. Also, he's in the Bible. He's also in the Torah, Jewish American Library. You can look him up. His name is also Amun-Ra in ancient Egyptian. And Amun-Ra is the one that wanted to usher in monotheism and make a one God religion. He was like, I'm tired of competing with my relatives for be the one God. From this point forward, I want to be the one God. He even started a war over this, using human beings, of course.
Of course.
The First Pyramid War. And he got Pharaoh Akhenaten, to fall in line with him. And then Pharaoh Akhenaten started going around defacing, had his soldiers and everybody defacing all the different glyphs around the regions that had any of the other gods on them, the other Anunnaki beings like Thoth and Ra and the Blue Ra. and Set and all these other people. He had them start defacing all these statues and everything else, breaking off the faces. That's when you go to Egypt, you see all these chipped off gods all over the place. And then he tried to bring everybody in to worship him and him only. He said, I wanted to be the one and true only God, and I am a jealous God. That actually made it into from the Egyptian text into the actual Bible. So people reading the Bible don't know that they're listening to the words of a guy who was a brutal killer, you know?
Yeah.
Not the creator of the universe.
I agree. And this whole concept of a jealous God has caused people to kill each other ever since.
Yes. That's the big problem with it. That's why I keep trying to expose it. Like the reason
came through with my memories is that religion is the cause of more violence than anything else. Even sexuality, property rights, land ownership, religion is what we kill each other over.
Yes. Look what's going on right now in the Middle East. You know.
Well, part of that's over who owns the oil. It turns out that the biggest oil deposits are underneath the Shia rather than the Sunni. So that's what they're presenting it as, a religious war, but it's really a resources war.
That makes a lot of sense.
They got along fine until the oil under the Sunnis ran out.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And a lot of the problems in Africa were because Gaddafi was going to build a African central bank, and it was the Pan-Africa system was going to have a gold dinar instead of a fiat currency, and it was going to be a common currency on the entire continent.
Right.
And the point was you had to buy all of their resources in gold. And the rest of the world doesn't have that much gold.
Right.
So that was why they had to kill him the way they did.
Yeah, that's what they did. They fabricated a lie against him, and they justified it. Oh, we have to go take this guy out because we got to bring democracy to his country because he's killing his people in the streets, which was a total lie, fabrication.
It was.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys that when a couple got married, he gave them the equivalent of $20,000 in a house.
Yep.
That doesn't sound like somebody that's killing his people in the streets.
Thank you. Thank you. And what's happened is because of that war that Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Biden went on, that private war to go kill this guy, that left them with no military, and it opened that entire region up for slave trade. And so now Black men and women are being traded for $400 a head right now for sex slavery, organ trafficking, and actual just pure old-fashioned slavery through that region right now because the fact that they took this guy out and destroyed the security of that area.
Yeah, that region had been prosperous and productive, and now it's a hellhole. And it's directly attributable to the Obama administration and Biden, who is now in the White House.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
those people did it. Those are the ones that did it.
Yep. But they'll never see justice because we only convict the witnesses.
Exactly. You're right. That's true. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, like JFK said, dissenters are silenced. Yeah.
Yeah. I've watched people in my world. I've lost 6 so far this year.
Oh man, sorry to hear.
So they're not shy about doing it. I keep wondering why they haven't hit me, but knock on wood. So, but yeah, there's a lot of crap going on in our world today, and the more people who wake up to it and overcome the dividers, the better chance we have of improving the situation.
Yep, absolutely.
So
I agree 1000%. Yeah, that's the goal. That's what we have to do. That's the only way. You know, rioting is not going to get it. Picketing is not going to get it.
no,
Crying on TV is not going to get it. And there's only one way. It's unification of the general masses of people coming together, and then we all at the same time say, we're not going to participate in your system anymore. We're done. And the day that that happens, there'll be a new regime on this planet, a regime run by the citizens and not by the oligarchs.
what I've been watching over the years is that boycotts work. They take some time, but they work. I watched the boycotts of South Africa, and that regime eventually fell. I've been watching the pushback against boycotts in support of Palestine. I've been watching boycotts against various poison products to the point that Monsanto no longer exists as a separate company. So boycotts work.
Yes.
Their pocketbook is the only thing that they feel.
Yep.
So this is a place we need to just stomp and stomp hard, is their pocketbooks. If you don't like what a company is supporting, don't buy their stuff.
Exactly.
If you don't like what a country is doing, don't buy their stuff.
Yeah. It's easy, but they make it seem like it's hard. If we woke up on Monday morning and everybody said, you know what, we're not going to go to work. You know what, we're not going to pay our mortgage payment. We're not going to pay our taxes. We're not going to, and we want to go to the bank and withdraw all of our money. Look at the system collapses that day. It's over.
Oh yeah, the banks only have 10% of the money that they have on deposit. Yep. Because they've basically said, well, we have blah, 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 and loaned it out. So if everybody goes in and asks for their money, only the first 10% will get it, because that's all they have. Mm-hmm. They've gotten so used to us using electronic money in the form of debit cards or other plastic that I don't think they even keep 10% in the bank now.
Yeah, I doubt they keep 10%. It's probably closer to 5%. Yeah.
So, but yeah, we could bring it all down in under a week.
I agree. It's really easy, but in the minds of people, they think it's hard. You know, well, the fear has them locked in.
Well, you take a look at what happened when they did the lockdowns. I don't know about where you live, but where I live in the mountains of California, we lost 80% of our small businesses basically overnight, and they have not come back.
Wow.
We're open now, but all of those people went out of business.
Yeah, gone.
Their home use people live at all of are looking to be doing general strike, boycotts. Yep. You only support your local people. Mm-hmm. You don't support the corporations anymore. You support each other.
Exactly.
And you grow food in your yard, regardless of what the homeowners association says. You can build a shelter around it so they never see it.
Exactly. Oh, you're real. That's real. You know, it's come to the point where when are you guys gonna take back your God-given rights?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have bypassing the Anunnaki pretenders.
Yes. Exactly.
So and it's time that we stood up and said, we're not going to take this anymore.
Exactly. I agree 1000%. That's what it comes down to. Because once we stand up, the game is over.
Yeah, it is. And they know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've gotten us completely off topic.
People need to hear this. This is important. They really need to hear it. They really need to
Well, can I add to that for a brief second, guys?
Sure.
I can even make it one better. I could go one better for you, Penny. Dan Perkins was listening in to what the man, Mr. Billy Carson, I call him bad boy because he is a bad boy. And he wants to, I'll send you his telephone number. He wants to have a discussion about doing an interview on me and his show, Blacks and Whites, and to talk about these issues as well.
Okay.
And
Sure.
you, like I told him, that's my man, the bad boy Billy Carson, the man that does it all. I mean,
Who are going to say that point blank. I've got some really intelligent friends who are in their 20s. System.
Yeah.
we'll never be able to take it back because
That was the goal. Yeah.
people are stupid. They stay divided.
Well, part of the problem too is the education system. Now,
Still dividing.
kids are not stupid. Okay,
Right.
I'm going to say that point blank. I've got some really intelligent friends who are in their 20s. The kids today are not stupid. They're not being taught what they need to know.
Yeah.
And that's the fault of the people who are setting the curriculum.
Hmm. Yeah.
The
That's true.
teachers are doing the best they can with what they're given to teach.
Yeah.
But
In a
the
lot of
kid-
cases, teachers know that what they're teaching is a lot of hogwash, but they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are, thanks to the lockdown again, we are to the point where we have a generation coming up that cannot read. They cannot write, much less reason.
Yeah.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you, Penny. Good
So
God.
you can tell them whatever you want and they can't understand it. And it's
know.
not because they're stupid, it's because they've never been taught the basics.
Yep. That's right. That's right. And a lot of that also in a weird way falls on the parents too, because they allow video games to babysit their kids instead of interacting and teaching them themselves.
Yes.
I have to do
Well-
have both of y'all on the show because y'all are hot. Y'all telling the truth. I hate to say this again. It's kind of funny, Penny, when you have to come out and speak on it. But when Billy Carson talks about it, it's like it must be going crazy. Just to let you know, in Florida, they were trying to push this radical race theory into your school systems, and the parents said, "Oh, this is what the school board said." This is so funny. We're trying to make it, very well done so that every student is represented. So hold on.
What does that translate to in English?
In English, that means we're trying to gear the education for, because you're Black, we're going to gear it to your level of intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like they did Tim Scott. They called him, they said his arms were too long and his hands were too big and his arms were too long. They're rubbing on the ground. They call him a Oreo, Uncle Tim, and no one got fired over that.
Right.
Sorry, I had to go there.
Personal insults
I want to get into it.
never be tolerated.
Black and white, blacksandwhites.us is the website. I guess all I can say. Bye. I'm not going there. I'm not going.
Yeah, we got to work through these things together, and the only way to work through these things is to actually talk with each other and address the elephant in the room, and talk about our differences and also our similarities, and work together to create a new world and a new planet together. All this other stuff is just really hurting us and hurting our future generations, and unfortunately, that can prevent us going into a golden age. So we really have to address this. This is the beginning stages of starting to work together now and get these things out and exposed. And let's talk and explain it ourselves to one another and really figure out what's bothering each one of us and how our minds are working so that we can somehow empathetically try to, consider the other person's feelings and then try to work toward a better future together.
Well, there has to be a basic respect for each other.
Right.
That is something that I'm seeing missing all across the board. We need to respect each other as the people we are. And we need to take responsibility for making sure all of our children learn to read, learn to write, learn to do mathematics, learn to reason. I mean, when I was a kid, they used to teach this thing called logic.
Yeah.
That's the core foundation for figuring out if somebody's lying to you or not. They don't teach that anymore. By the time my kids were in high school, they had stopped teaching it. And so I was this pain in the butt parent who went in and said, excuse me, my kid is taking geometry. Why isn't he doing two-column proofs?
There you
So
go.
I had to teach the kid at home because they said, well, we don't do that anymore. And I said, why not? I said, do you at least teach logic in sophomore English? Well, no, it was decided it was too hard for the children to understand. Okay, they're not teaching logic. They're not teaching rhetoric, which is how you figure out if somebody's bullshitting you or not.
Exactly.
They're not teaching rhetoric anymore. When I was in high school, we called it speech class.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah,
right.
they're not, they may have a speech class, but they're not teaching the same things anymore. So mathematics, rhetoric, and logic are the foundation of critical thinking, and they've watered them all down or eliminated them entirely. And now you've got kids coming up that cannot read. I don't think these kids are the problem.
No.
Kids
It's the
are not any
environment.
dumber. Kids are not any dumber than they ever were.
Right.
They're not any lazier than they ever were.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with what they're being taught?
Yeah.
And I think we need to start with that and say, we used to teach blah, 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 blah. Why aren't we now?
Yeah. Right. Well, also, these the school system is designed to raise a bunch of low IQ workers, and I mean, the fact that you've got to spend the first 25, 26 years of your life, in some cases 30 years of your life, just going through school is ridiculous to me. It's absolutely ridiculous. What kids are learning, by the time they get to high school, they should have already been able to do part of that in grade school. I don't see a need to go past 10 years of school and then another 3-4 years of college or med school, or whatever you add to that. Within that same, by the time they turn 18, they should be ready to do whatever it is they're supposed to be trying to do. Not wait until they're 30 and have $100,000 in student loans, debt, and all this other kind of crazy stuff. And the 90% of them never develop the IQ high enough to do anything more than stock a grocery shelf.
Well, back in the day, we used to have trade schools.
Yep.
Because it was understood that not everyone was meant to go to college.
That's very, very true. You got to give them something to work with. You got to give them something to do. But now it's just take these, memorize these exams, and then when you get done, we're going to give you this piece of paper and throw you out there into the world. Instead of finding out what these kids' talents and passions are. Maybe my talent is working on electronics. Well, put that kid into an electronics system. Let them work on electronics.
Yes.
Put that kid into this other program, whatever their passion is.
Well, I have a grandson who's in high school, and my son and I discussed the situation with the kid, and I recommended a trade school. And so my grandson, my son, and his wife discussed it, and they came up with welding. Well, a lot of people are going, oh, welding. Welding is one of the higher paid things out there.
Yeah.
Plumbing is next.
Yeah. I mean, one of my relatives was a welder for top secret black budget military airplanes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make a lot of money in welding.
You can do really well for yourself in welding or plumbing or electrical or any of the construction trades.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be an English major sitting in a university and then become a lawyer. I mean, To be honest, those people are parasites.
Well, that's a fact. We know that. There's a lot of them that are, there are some good ones, but the majority of them are looking to make money off of a victim, whether that person is right, wrong, or indifferent, doesn't matter to them. They just see them as a dollar sign, and their main objective is to extract the money from the pockets of people at any cost. They don't care how much they got to lie, they got to fabricate, how they got to twist truths. They really can care less. It's about, listen, I got to pay for this yacht and this Rolls Royce. I got to get this money. So I'm going to make up and do whatever it takes in these courtrooms and manipulate and psychologically manipulate these people to whatever it takes to get this money. And that's their main objective.
I used to be a priest's assistant, and we had this local lawyer. At that point, he was a defense attorney, and he was a big name. He's now a court justice in our county. And at that time, he said, nothing is ever cut and dried. I don't even ask if the people are innocent or guilty. It's a chess game between the lawyers.
That's a fact.
And I'm like, I was just floored. I had no idea. And this was 25 years ago, he's telling me this. So when you have people in the game telling you this stuff, you should stop and listen, because they're telling you the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. Very, very true. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. The biggest problem that we have in this society is capitalism has destroyed humanity. And
there has to be some limit to capitalism.
Right. It's got to be a limit. Like, in other words, capitalism, okay, let's barter and trade and we make money, we break bread. That's fine. But let's take the profits out of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. There are some things that should not be for profit.
Exactly. I think we'll find a lot of these pharmaceuticals will just disappear. They won't even exist because why there's no reason to make them, because we can't trick the people into putting this stuff in their body and killing themselves, because we won't make any money, so there's no profit. So, well, let's tell them the herbs that they got to use. The doctor's gonna say, oh, well, you better take this herb and this herb because that's gonna help you, versus take this pill and this pill from this pharmaceutical company with 20,000 side effects. So we got to take the profit out of pharmaceuticals. We got to take the profit out of prisons. We got to take the profit out of all these different types of things that are really harming us. And then you'll find the real deal benefit of those things will come out. Real medicine will be teaching.
And stop making things illegal just because someone else wants to make money off them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's another thing we got to do, I mean, there's countless people that are in jail right now for marijuana, which is a plant. And most of those people are the plant was for them, for their own self-use. Yeah. So you have people locked up for picking flowers. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life.
That's exactly what they're in jail for. And some of them were put in prison for life over having a flower in their possession.
Yeah. It's the craziest thing. And you know what? But the thing is, we've allowed this to happen to ourselves because we won't unify and see the bigger picture and stop this from happening. We keep allowing them to do this to ourselves.
Drugs are one of the top 3 things being sold on the planet. And they're not always in this order, but it's human trafficking, drugs, and weapons.
Yeah.
And those are the top 3 things in trade on this planet. And we need to stop and think about what the hell are we doing?
Yeah. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about an advanced civilization, alien life flying past our planet, and they would scan our planet and pick up the evidence that there's technological advancements down here and go, whoa, let's stop and take a look. And so they start scanning the planet and they realize, oh, wow, they've got a weapons system. They've got over 3,800 nuclear weapons on the surface of this planet in silos. And they go, wow, they're really ready for for a space battle of some kind. But then they track the trajectory of the codes for those nukes, and they go, wait a minute, these nuclear bombs are pointed back at their own planet while they're still on it with no escape pods. Oh, there's no intelligent life here. Let's keep going.
Yeah. There was an episode of Deep Space Nine